And I really appreciate Shelf Life hosting this book launch that, as you said, is about a year later than we anticipated it would because of COVID. So Eugene, thanks so much for asking me to be here. I'm just delighted.
Well, you're welcome, boss.
You never called me that before, Eugene.
No. Well, you published my book, so that makes you my boss. Well, you were too when we taught together.
Well, that's kind of true, right? That was a highlight for me, is when we co-taught that contemporary drama course at St. Mary's University.
Oh yeah, we should talk a bit about that, because I was the writer in residence at St. Mary's for about, was it 10 years or so, and I also taught contemporary drama, which is 20th century basically. And one year, Tara and I did a tag team teaching. So both of us were in the classroom, and we would talk about plays. Tara coming at it from a learned academic point of view, and me coming at it from drunken, crazy artist point of view. And you say, well, no, he didn't do that because it's thematic. He didn't know what to do with that character, so he killed him. Practical solutions, right? So no, yeah, it was fun, and I think those students really loved it. I mean, they've got two radically different points of view from time to time on what are now thought to be classic plays of the 20th century. And we even snuck one of mine in, remember?
You said you weren't drunken when you were teaching.
Well, it's the morning. Come on.
It's true. We talked about reading the play out of the text and some of the the production pieces, and then you gave it from your perspective, what it might have looked as the author was writing it. And I think you helped take it off the page in a really different way.
Yeah, I think I made it more of a human process, which God knows writing is a human process. Yeah, but I wanted to say to her, and thank you for being here. I'm happy that St. Mary's Press is up and going. You've got some beautiful books, and I'm very happy with this play of mine. And I just want to talk a little bit about my association and why St. Mary's Press would publish this. And I want to talk about where the play came from in the first place. So it was an unusual situation, to put it mildly. St. Mary's had a new theater space in a new building out there. And if you don't know where St. Mary's is, it's a beautiful campus down in Fish Creek Park. You might see the water tower as you drive down McLeod Trail. I don't usually get that far south of to see it, but some of you might live along there. In fact, I rarely cross 17th Avenue. There was a new performance venue, and the college wanted to open it in a significant way, not just with the wine and cheese, which St. Mary's is really good at, I can tell you that, but with the play. And so they got a hold of me and asked me if I would write a play for the 4th year drama class. And you see Joe Norman Shaw between Tara and me, and we're going to talk to Joe in a few minutes about actually directing the play. So it was a strange situation where I talked to Joe and I said, okay, I'll write this play. How many students do you have? Do they all need a role? He goes, yeah, they all need a role. They all want to get their money's worth. And I said, well, how many? And they said, it looks like about 15. And okay, the next largest play I think I've written is 6, which is considered huge in the Canadian theater nowadays. But I thought, well, okay, this is a new challenge. Never tried anything like this, a large cast play. I'll never get any professional productions, but maybe I'll get a bunch of college productions, and that would be really wonderful if that happened. And so I started to write. Now, if you've ever taken my playwriting course, you'll know that I say, and this surprises the hell out of everyone, I say, don't start with an idea, don't start with a theme, start with a location. And so what I needed, because I didn't know anything about the cast, and I didn't really know what I wanted to say with this play, is I started with a location, and I was reminded of a story. And this often happens with writers, where we file stories away for future reference. And it may have been 10 years ago, a friend of mine from Calgary wanted to move to Toronto. And so he flew down to Toronto, and as you will, he looked at a bunch of different apartments, found one that he really liked, and put a deposit down, first and last month's rent. And you know, in Toronto, that would be a couple $1,000 for both. So maybe he put down $4,000 or $5,000. He flew back to Calgary. He got a moving van. He put all his stuff in it. He drove the 4 days to Toronto. He got to that apartment, and there were about 5 other moving vans on the street in front of that apartment building. And what had happened is some kind of scuzzy criminal had gotten in there and rented it to a whole bunch of people without the right to, no right to rent it. And so you had all these people in this apartment with their stuff in their trucks on the street with nowhere to go and paying for the truck. And it just created a total mess. So I thought that's an interesting premise for a play. And I thought, it doesn't matter who comes into that apartment. It could be anyone, right? So because I didn't know anything about the cast, and because I didn't know anything about the cast, I started off trying to create all the characters as gender neutral. So I gave them names of cities instead of calling them Deb or Bob. I called them Fargo and Mr. Windsor, and well, I guess I knew Mr. Windsor was going to be a guy. So I think I got down. I had about 10. I was pretty happy with myself, and I needed 3 more women. No, 4. And then why sometimes you're just lying on your couch Saturday afternoon, maybe you're a bit hungover, and synchronized swimming comes on. So I think this might be the only play that I know of in the world that has a synchronized swim team on it, or parts of it. And then there was a need for 2 more. And this is the genius of what happened there. Is I teach a class at Avis College in Calgary. It's for immigrants. And when I'm teaching that class, I become really aware of the difficulty of the journey to Canada from other countries. So I put in 2 characters. I just called them refugees. And I kind of meant that. I didn't mean that they were immigrants. And I think I also wrote it during the time when all the Syrians were being allowed to come to Canada. And in my opinion, thank God that we're that kind of country that allows good people here. And so these 2 immigrants ended up in the play as well. And that was our cast. And I'm happy and proud to say as a male that it could be cast with 10 females and 5 male roles. It could also go 9 and 6, but I actually could go a few different ways, and we can talk to Joe about that. So we put it all together, and then we had our run of the play, right, Tara? And you guys paid me well. I have to thank Jerry Turcott, who's here for that as well. Jerry's the president of St. Mary's. St. Mary's University has a president who really identifies more as being a writer than a university president. So that'll tell you what kind of place it is. If you want your kids to have a liberal arts education in the best sense, it's in a smaller environment than a place like U of C, then St. Mary's is a good place. Yeah, there's your promo, Sarah.
Oh, thank you.
Did you have anything else you wanted to say about St. Mary's?
Well, I think, as you said, it's a unique place where we really know our students and we mentor them. And I think this play is an excellent illustration of that, is that we really wanted something dynamic for Joe to direct in the program. And it meant a lot to us to have the ability to commission a play for the students where they each had an equal part, and they each had a substantial part. And that's part of our ethos at St. Mary's, is that we see every student, we know every student by name, and they get a rigorous and deep education. And I think that's your and my experience too, through mentoring students over the years.
And I'm looking on at who's here, and we've got a couple of former students in the audience, and that always thrills me to maintain those friendships and to see what happens to our students, right? Because to me, they've never just been numbers or someone to deal with. I mean, especially I think working with creative writing in something expressive like that, you do get to know them better,
Mhm.
and you do hope for them in the future. And I think like any good teacher, I hope that my students will surpass me someday. You know, that's the goal. It's not a competition. We can all come out ahead, right?
Well, then they got to see the process from the inside, didn't they, Eugene? Because I
Yeah,
remember that you and Joe Norman and I sat down with the script and with the cast, and we sat in one of the classrooms at St. Mary's, and we did the first read through. And
yeah,
then I know you were part of the production, the workshopping, and so the students got a unique opportunity to work alongside the playwright, alongside the director, and see the kind of changes that you made taking it from your script onto the stage, and now
yeah.
they get to see it published as a book.
Yeah, and you know, there's a lot of professional actors who've never worked on a new play. I One of my first plays at ATP, there was two actors came from the Shaw Festival because they've never had a chance to work on a new play, and so not everybody has that opportunity. And yeah, it was a meaningful way for me to leave St. Mary's if I've left.
Well, we're not quite ready to let you go yet.
Jerry keeps thinking up new things I could do, so I won't never say never, right? So maybe we could bring Joe in at this point. According to my
Sure.
schedule, this is about when.
I was talking there for a second, then I realized I was muted. So it
Oh,
passed.
so we missed your great thoughts. Damn. Can you
Yeah.
remember them? You are getting kind of old.
Well, I was just tagging on to what you guys were saying. I mean, I run the drama program at St. Mary's, as well as Company of Rogues Actors Studio and Rogues Theater. So we did two versions of the play. One with a cast at St. Mary's. That was the first one, and then we did it with my uh, professional oriented actors through Rogues Theater at the Pump House. So it was quite a journey. But what was really nice for me is every year you come up and say, I've got 15 students, 10 women, 5 men. What? I gotta find a play to fit this cast. Eugene,
It
would you like to
it
help
had
us
to have
out?
been 5 or 6 years in a row. I'd just be minding my own business in the cafeteria, and you'd come in and your hair was all pulled out and everything because you've been thinking, contemplating directing Our Town Yet One More Time, or the dining room, or whatever it's called, and you go, gee, come on, man, give me something. I say, no, 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 not interested. And then a good way to interest me and a lot of other writers is to wave a check in front of our noses. And suddenly I say, oh yeah, Joe, I think I'm going to have something for you. No problem. And so, yeah, you have to
That's,
eat.
we've always tried to like do ensemble pieces where the casting is fairly egalitarian, so that all of the
Yeah.
students really get a chance to step up and play some roles of significance, and work in a very collaborative format, which I think it serves the university, which we're not a professional training program, but we got some pretty good actors, and but the way that we've
Yeah.
worked that
Yeah.
way
There were some,
has really
some good
served them
actors
well,
in
and your
that
play
first
really
cast.
fit into that.
Yeah. We got a synchronized swimmer here, man.
You are. I see
On the first
Linus
cast.
there was one of our synchronized swimmers.
Yeah.
I'm
What
wearing your bathing cap tonight, so.
Right. To speak to that a little more, um, I thought that this was an opportunity to write a play that would be done at universities, and I thought I should try to include as many opportunities for the actors as I possibly could. So I broke every rule of dramaturgy that goes right back 2,500 years to the Greeks, and I wrote one scene in which everybody had a monologue. And you might think, oh my God, you didn't do that. Oh, that must have just been dreadful. People falling asleep, falling out of their chairs, cursing me. And yet I think it was one of the best sequences I ever wrote. And I'm going to read a couple of those monologues to you, because I know that you're all dying to hear me read my words. And so I won't disappoint you. I'll read a few of those monologues, but it did give everybody a chance to know what it's like to be alone on stage with the spotlight only on you, and no one to fall back on, no one to bail you out. Here's the monologue, right? And I think that was that one great thing that the cast must have appreciated. They might have hated me at the time for doing that to them, but I thought it was important.
Well, and Brad Levitt's beautiful set and lights really lent themselves well to kind of a fluidity as it kind of flowed from one monologue to the other and using different parts of the stage. So I don't know if Brad's out there, but he certainly created something beautiful for us to work on.
Yeah. So I guess maybe one of the more interesting or unusual things about this play and its productions were that we closed it on a Saturday night out at St. Mary's, and then on Sunday morning we were in the Rogue studio with a whole new cast and a whole new production in mind. Now I've had a lot of I've had openings back to back in different cities of the same play in Ontario, but I've never had that experience because you with that first cast, good or bad, you hear that actor's voice in that role, and then to go the next day, even if there'd been a week, it would have been less jarring, I suppose. But to go the very next day and now hear 15 people that I'd never even met reading these lines, it was kind of shocking to me. I mean, I was almost in shock that day. And and this brings up something that maybe we forget very quickly, because I saw on Facebook that 2 years ago I saw 3 plays in 2 days in Calgary. I saw a matinee of Sherry D. Wilson's love letter to Emily Carr, and then I saw Christiane Hertz's play, The West End, also produced by Rogues Theatre with Joe directing, and then I saw Waiting for Godot the next afternoon at the Grand Theatre. What 3 marvelous plays in 2 days. Remember when we could do that, everyone? And so the point I'm making is that this cast has 15 characters. So we were in the Little Wee rehearsal hall or studio at Company of Rogues. There's 15 actors. There's the stage manager. There's me. There's Brad, the designer. There's the publicist. There's the janitor. There's somebody else. I don't know who was all there, but we had 22 people in a little wee room. No one thought anything of it, and look where we are now. I mean, we're all alone. and it's just, it seems almost like it couldn't have happened the way that we've had to live this last year. So I'm kind of glad I did write a big cast play, and that we did have the opportunity to hang out like that and be close to one another. And I think that hope that we all have that the theater comes back sooner rather than later, it's not just the actors and the production team, it's the audience, right? That's most of us who are here must love theater somehow. And isn't that what we love to do, is to see our friends and sit in a darkened room and share an experience and not this, right? So it's brings back a time that seems more than 14 months ago in my mind. So anyway, that said, here we are, and I guess Joe, do you have any other memories, or Tara, or any thoughts, or anything that I'm obviously forgetting to say?
I remember driving with you every day from Cafe Vino with our coffees and our cowboy cookies to rehearsal at St. Mary's. I also remember asking you if I could take a crack at writing the song for the show. And, if it sucked, we would get somebody better to do it. And coming over to your apartment with my guitar and playing the song for you that ended up being in the show, thank God. I think.
Well, that's what and that's exactly what I'd forgotten to talk about, Joe.
And so for me, because I'm not a professional songwriter, that was a really great creative opportunity. And one of the coolest moments in the second production, when we were in one of the final rehearsals for the show, the song had been played solo just by the lead actor, but all of a sudden the rest of the cast chimed in on the chorus of the song, and kind of you could hear all these voices from backstage. And this was not well, it wasn't planned. I don't know how much they planned it, but there was this moment of like really emotional for me, anyways, because
Yeah,
my song.
that's called a holy wow moment.
We're gonna keep that.
Yeah.
So there's lots of great stories and spontaneous creative moments that kind of came through this journey over the, I don't know, the
Yeah.
number of months we worked on it.
Yeah, I meant to make this point, is that dramaturgically or dramatically or theatrically, something has to be at stake. There has to be some form of tension in the play. And if it was just an empty apartment, well, then that would be one scenario. But the kind of genius idea I had was to put someone in that apartment who had a big deadline staring at him in the face. And he's a musician, and he's had a couple advances on his next project, and he hasn't done anything because his girlfriend left him and she's ghosting him. And we all know what that, well, I know what that's like. I don't know if you guys have had that happen to you. It's horrible. And and that's the lead character. But throughout the play, well, every time he turns around and tries to get some work done, there's a new person in his apartment going, who the hell are you? And, you know, and it's a young couple, and it's this little kind of wafy, what we call him, emo boy, or
emo guy,
yeah, who's named Fargo, or a synchronized swim team, or God knows who else. So he's always, you know, he's trying to get this song written. And so it occurred to me that we needed a song, you know, and I'm not a songwriter either. So Joe and I had, you know, we were having a full-blown bromance all fall as we were putting this together. So he came over with the song he had written for me. I mean, it was so sweet. Came over to my apartment. It was about 80 degrees below zero, I remember, and sat in here, and we had a coffee, and he played this beautiful song. And that was such a beautiful moment of friendship, but also solving a dramaturgical problem. So when those two things can happen, you know, together, that's what those are the moments you live for, Joe. And you know, that led me to dedicating this play to you and to our friendship. So thank you again for that.
Thank you for the amazing ride that we went on together.
And thanks for all the cowboy cookies too.
Had one yesterday.
Did you? Did you think of me?
I did.
I know, you told me. Tara's gone, so let me check. I have some. Yeah, well then I think I could start doing a little bit of reading so that you get a flavor of what this play is like, and I'll just sort of explain to you what's been happening. Okay, so we have Lenny. That's the guy who lives in the apartment, the musician. He's first visited. Oh, then there's two street people named Manfred and Bonnie. Manfred was roughly patterned after a very crazy individual who hangs out at Cafe Bino, which is my coffee shop in Calgary. He thinks that he used to drink coffee with Jackson Pollock in New York City, but Jackson Pollock died in 1956, and this guy's about 60, so that would have been a tough trick. But I long ago stopped correcting him, because these people, Nico, all these other people from the Velvet Underground, they really do live in his mind, and it's like arguing with someone who has Alzheimer's. There's no point. So, but he's always fascinated me. So he became kind of a guide, I guess, on the street, and this woman Bonnie, who he ends up being with. And then we have a very unhappy young couple who think they're in love and are going to move in together, but their relationship dissolves and deteriorates into bitter acrimony throughout the course of the play, till they're left parting in tears, and we don't know what will happen to them. And then we had this young guy named Fargo, who has psychotic parents. He's an only child. He lives down in the basement. And his psychotic parents scream and fight and argue about things like vitamin D. And finally, one of the characters said, "God, your parents sound brutal, man. He goes, oh, no, 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 brutal doesn't begin to cover it. And then he said, what do they do for a living? And he goes, well, my mom teaches kindergarten and my dad's a social worker. Actually made me laugh out loud when I was rereading that today. He's my favorite character ever, Fargo. And then they are joined by, I believe it's the synchronized swim team next. Does that sound right, Joe? And then these three girls who never do this, okay, never do this. I named them Kristen, Christy, and Kirsten, or something like that. I just wanted to give the sense that they were kind of interchangeable. Sorry, Samantha, but they were. And but to have to type those and go, who the hell is this one? Oh yeah, Christy. Yeah, and typing in the wrong names, and to the point where we actually got one of the actresses' names spelled wrong in the book because it's one of those names. We put Kristen instead of Kirsten, right? Or Kirsten instead of, whatever we did, Joe, we spelled her name wrong. I felt bad about that.
Yeah.
And then we had their coach come in with their whistle. And there's a lot of comedy in this play. But then we had Mr. Windsor, and we actually show him in action, making these poor unsuspecting people sign these egregious leases. And then we have Lima, still back to when I was using city names for characters. She's the building manager who's in love with Lenny. And then we had, of all things, two refugees into this madness. Drops towards the end of the play an incredibly serious issue, because I'll tell you, when I tell my students, don't worry about themes, don't worry about ideas, they'll happen. You get your location, and then get your characters, and then see what they want to do together and figure out what the play is about. And then the play came down to one word for me that I could tell you is what I think it's about, and that's sanctuary, the need for sanctuary. Because an apartment represents a home, and we all need a home, right? We all need a place that I'm looking at you, none of you is sitting in a Tim Hortons. We all have a place to stay. And those of us, say, who grew up in Canada, well, we just assume that we're going to have a home. But then two of the characters are street people, right? They don't have a home. One guy says he sleeps under a bridge. He says it's not even funny because it's true. And then we have two refugees who, with very limited funding, get ripped off and think that they're not going to possibly have a place to stay. So suddenly that idea of home and the ludicrousness of the situation of being ripped off like this, which we can all kind of laugh at, right? But there's a dark side to it as well. That what if you don't have a place? And then I started to think that sanctuary, when I looked it up, and I always do this if I think I've got an important word, and right away you realize there's something sacred to the idea of sanctuary, that this isn't just something to be tossed off lightly. It's important. It's important, and it's as important as anything. If you have a place that you don't like being in, and that's where you live, it's hell. And I've been there before. Maybe some of you have as well. And then it's also protection, right? We have that idea with sanctuary. And then I started to realize that just how vulnerable some of the people in this play are. And they make a lot of jokes and it's funny, but when these refugees come on, it becomes suddenly very serious. And I got to thank Joe for handling that transition, because the play takes quite a turn. And you suddenly realize we're talking about something very serious. Do you remember that, Joe, with those refugees coming on?
Yeah, I mean, because obviously each of the characters has their, dealing with arriving at an apartment that you think you're renting and is not yours, but because they're local, and I mean, obviously it provides trouble for all of them. But when the refugees arrive, and have no place, no money, nowhere to go, it goes to a whole deeper level.
Yeah, and I'm glad it did. And I just want to talk one thing about that. you know, we're all aware now of BIPOC and everything else, and um, those uh, those two characters could be from anywhere, you know. And I was looking at the casting of this play, and it really, because of its the disparate nature of all the different characters, that they could be from anywhere. They could be any color. Wouldn't, and honestly, they could be of any gender. I, I'm really trying to get away from that kind of model that I grew up in the theater, and just say, what does it matter, right? I was trying to think. I think there may have been a black lady in one of the roles, but I can't even remember if that's true, and I can't remember whether that was St. Mary's or whether that was Rhodes.
That was in the Rhodes production.
Oh, okay. So there was.
Yeah.
You know, did it matter? Did it matter? Not to me. It worked out fine. In fact, you know, one of the nicest moments that I had with this play, or the most meaningful moments, was we just had opening night at St. Mary's, and I'd gone back into the theater for something, and there's a young man, a student at St. Mary's. I didn't get his name. Uh, he was a black man. Maybe he was 20 years old, or maybe from Africa. And he stopped me and he said, "Excuse me, did you write this play?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Why did you put in like these refugee people?" And I said, "Well, I'm trying to tell a story that includes and is about everyone, you know." And he said, "Oh, okay." I said, "Well, did you not like it?" And he goes, "No, no, I just couldn't believe that you'd done that." And I said, "Yeah, I know. That's because you don't very often see it, right? You're not going to see your reality reflected in the Canadian stage, but that's what something that I think has to change." And then he thanked me, and we did one of those, you know, secret brotherhood handshakes, and then it was a really wonderful moment. And I thought, wow, I've done something here. It meant a lot to me. It really meant a lot to me. Yeah. So we get to a point in the play, and I'm going to start reading here because I said this would only take about an hour. So I got some of these monologues. I don't really love reading scenes where I go, well, then he said, well, then he said, you know. So I'm going to read these monologues. I'm going to read a very brief scene. And then I've got a lot of friends on here. Friends in Regina. Hi, Steve. Penny. I've got, oh my gosh, Sunny. Sunny's from Sri Lanka. He's up in McLennan where the birds are. Don't even ask. Natasha, Savannah, I got relatives. Holy Moses. So I'm happy to stay and talk if you don't mind after I do these little readings, if I get myself a beer. Because this is honestly herbal green tea. Okay, so going into scene 21, I think I told you, basically there's just a hullabaloo and a commotion and a guy trying to write some songs and people wandering around the apartment. And then suddenly, bang, I can't remember, Joe, what you did at the end of that scene before, but suddenly maybe the lights change and we're going into these monologues. So I gotta put my little light. I've got to get my light here. So the first one, and I think you'll get a sense of what I'm talking about with the idea of home or sanctuary, or the first one comes from the crazy street guy. Only in the monologue, he's not crazy at all. So he says, "It's not a small thing to be invited inside after standing outside for so long, to be given something to eat and a warm drink, not in a church basement, not in a center of hope or whatever, but in someone's home where someone actually lives. Oh, that's not a small thing at all." I mean, what do you think? You think I like standing out there all day, acting crazy for everybody's entertainment? Yeah, no. So it feels nice, brothers and sisters, to be invited inside. And I promise I'll try not to pee on your rug. Monologue. So that's our crazy guy. And then I'm going to read the one by Lima. Now, this was delivered with the most amazing accent I've ever heard in the Rogues production. Kirsten, right? There's somewhere between here and the tip of South America did her accent live, but and she was such a, it was a charming performance. But I'm going to read it just with my Saskatchewan accent, okay? Yeah. And she's the building manager. Day after day, day in, day out, all day long, all the live long day, they ring the buzzer and ask if I have any vacancies for them. They need a place to live. Well, who cares? I need some peace and quiet so I can watch my programs on the TV. It doesn't stop them, nothing does. They come and they ring the buzzer. They have nothing but their dreams and their hopes and a few clothes and ironing boards, some bad art for the wall, 1 or 2 books. They ask me how much. I tell them. Their heart leaps up in their chest. Not so fast, I tell them. You have to have first and last. And their hearts sink and they feel there is no place in the world for them. And in this, they would be right. It's Lima. And then I told you Fargo, this kid with the arguing, battling parents. Now this is an argument that you'll get. Like, there's no point taking certain vitamins if you don't do it sublingually, right? And so people will fight about these things at breakfast. I've heard that anyway. When home isn't a home in any meaningful sense, but it's all you know, all you have ever known since you could remember, and all that you have ever felt is that you're not living up to something, some standard that's never really been explained to you. And so you end up feeling that you're always wrong about everything. And over the years, you no longer have any idea of what you believe, whether it's right or fair or true. You just end up hiding in your room, making as little noise as possible. And so anywhere you can hide is home. It's Fargo. So now I have to do, because the refugees speak in fragments, okay? And I just want to set this up by saying, I taught a course at George Brown University. It is now in Toronto. And it was, well, long before I ever went to Avis College here, but it was a legitimate ESL class, so only one course, and I taught it. And I went to George Brown over on King Street in Toronto. There was a snowstorm, and I think there was some kind of strike of the TTC, so it was really hard getting there. And yeah, I don't know if you know Toronto at all, they salt the streets, so I had a kind of new pair of leather shoes. I'd ruined my shoes, and I was all pissed off and in a bad mood, and I got to the class. I thought, oh my God, so hard getting here tonight. I said, anyone else have problems? And these are all immigrants, right? Said, anyone else have trouble getting to the class? One guy puts up his hand. I said, yeah. What was your experience? He goes, well, my family was asleep. Then some soldiers came and we heard gunshots, so we had to flee. We could take very little. We ended up running for the whole night trying to find a place to hide. We slept in a building for a couple of days, but then it wasn't safe. And eventually we came into some kind of refugee camp. We stayed there for 2 months. So finally they processed us and put us in another one. Then we went to Germany for 2 years. They kept telling us we could go to Canada, we'd go to Canada, but it went on for 2 years of just living in a tent with nothing. And then finally we got our visa to come to Canada, and they flew us here, and we ended up in Toronto. I said, that was your journey. I said, never mind about my shoes. You know, I felt so sheepish and so humble. And one by one, these people in this class started to explain their journey to the class. And it was quite an amazing class. 20, 30 years later, I remember. So they talk, the two of them, okay? Now, the casting is interesting that we used two females. I think that was just the casting of the students, the gender of the students who we had on hand. In my mind, it could also be a male and a female. Or if you're going to go that way, it could also be two males. But the fact it's two females, I always thought must raise the question. Did you ever think this, Joe, that they might be in a lesbian relationship, which if they're from certain parts of the world is really going to be frowned upon, right?
Possibly that, or that they've lost people along the way that
Yeah,
arrived here alone. I think it's good that it's left to the audience's
yeah,
imagination to
yeah,
conjure on.
yeah. I'm perfectly fine with that. Whichever way, whatever you think is fine with me. But they're looking for an apartment together here, and they're not having much luck. So this is kind of like poetry, I guess, more than remember. Yes, I remember. They bombed our street in the night. Many of our neighbors passed. Yes, away, passed away. Dead, they died. Neighbors' children passed. Yes, away. Our place, home, spared, just, no power, water, but walls and around us and everywhere, absence. Nowhere, silence, but for the dog, black dog barking in the night. It barked all night. Otherwise, yes, otherwise, silence. And the dog stopped. Silence. Deafening silence. No food, no water. Prayer. Yes, prayer. God saved us. God is good. But for what did he save us? We lived in a tent. Everywhere tents. No home, just tents. So many people like us. No home, nothing. And now? Yes, now. We fly, arrive, we are here. And now? Yes, now. They say we, who lost everything, who have nothing. They say we are terrorists. Yes, terrorists. All we did, all we are doing is survive. Yes, survive with nothing. And now again, turned away. No home, no place to stay. Nothing. Yes, nothing. Here, nothing. Again, still. So
Mm.
those two.
It's really interesting visiting this world, Eugene, because it's so powerful, and there's such poignancy in some of the beautiful moments that you created with the most um, day-to-day situations in some regard, and yet in this it takes us obviously to someplace afar, and the way those situations juxtapose and bring us into a really kind of poignant of all these characters coming together in this little tiny apartment, all vying for a sanctuary. It's just a very powerful message and a powerful conglomeration of people coming together.
Yeah, thank you. I love hearing that with the two female voices, actually, that piece. Isn't it funny that when you write a play, many of you are thinking of doing it, and some of you, Tawny and a few others, have been in my class, but we can do anything. You know, you want to write poems, write poems. You know, make them fit. Uh, too much of this gets a little boring after a while, I find, and to break it up and go a little more abstract, I think is cool. And I'll just end this section with Lenny's fine. He gets the final word. Uh, he says, there will always be deadlines. Deadlines will be met and deadlines will be broken. And yet the world will keep on turning and the sun will also rise and all that jazz. And at the same time, there will always be distractions. Though by anyone's standards, today has been a little extreme, a little over the top. But the thing is, what are you going to do? Freak out on everyone and have a tantrum and run to your room and slam the door? These people are already freaking out enough. Who could blame them? They don't need any extra help from me. What are they really after? A place of their own, a place to call home, a place to lay their head at the end of the day, a place where they can close the door on the great mad world without and chill inside alone and on their own terms. Instead of finding that, they find they've been ripped off, victimized, thrown to the wolves, homeless, bereft of the one simple thing they were after, sanctuary. I can't turn my back on all that, and I absolutely refuse to blame the victims. At some point, we, all of us, have to open our arms and open our hearts and say that one magic word, welcome. Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Don't you agree? We need to welcome people. I don't just mean immigrants. I mean, we need to welcome people into our hearts because there's so much isolation now. And we need to take time, right? And time for one another and show love for one another. So those refugees, Joe did a beautiful job of directing this. They're on their way out, and they're so forlorn, and they've got mismatched clothing, and who knows? They don't even know what services that Canada offers, and they're on their way. And so Joe had them walking across from stage right to stage left, I think, and they're talking. And one says, "Don't worry, we'll be all right." And two said, "I wonder, I'm tired. Yeah, I'm exhausted. I know, but God in his mercy has kept us safe so long. We just have to journey on a little further. Towards what? I don't know. God knows, I don't. Let's not lose our faith now. We've come too far. I want a stove to cook our dinner on, a bed to fall into at the end of the day, the things we used to have and took for granted. It doesn't seem like too much." And at that point, Lima jumps up and comes on stage, and she's following them. And she goes, "Ah, here you are." And one says, "Where else would we be?" And Lima says, "I'm glad you're still here." And two said, "We have nowhere else to be." And Lima says, "Listen, my family came here to this country in a similar fashion. We came from a different place, different people committing different atrocities, but the song remains the same for people like us. We came many years ago. I was just a girl. We stayed at a hotel for the longest time. There was no work for my father, very little money, just what the government gave us. 6 of us cramped into that little hotel room. It seemed hopeless, endless, but little by little, we caught some breaks. A church found us a place to live. People gave us the things we needed to start over. My father found work. He was an engineer back home. First, he drove a cab. But finally, he got on with an engineering firm. Now they have a good life here. We all have. It's possible." And one says, "Well, maybe for some. Yeah, if you're lucky. It doesn't seem to be much for us here. And it's always cold." And then Lima says, "Okay, there's an empty apartment. I'm supposed to be saving it, but oh, never mind. It doesn't matter. We'll figure it out." And one asks, "An apartment here?" "Upstairs." "He's taken our money. We can't afford it." And Lima says, "We'll figure something out. We'll make this okay. Come with me. I'll show you your new home. Okay?" "Okay." Thank you. So that's sort of a little bit of the thank you. Yeah, go ahead. I know if we were at Shelf Life, you would be rushing up to me to buy me a beer now. So now